Hello and welcome to the News Desk with me, Chris Stafford, alongside Nancy Gillan. This is Season 4, Episode 8. And Nancy, we are just catching our breath from the Beijing Winter Olympic Games, aren't we? It seemed to end very quickly, didn't it? When you think about the build-up and, you get the opening ceremony and then competition starts. But when it comes to the end, it just seems to fall off very, very quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was actually thinking this as well. It just suddenly, I think I saw it was like, oh, the closing ceremony is tomorrow. And I was a bit confused because it did seem to, like you say, finish very quickly. But then looking back, I think you realise, quite how much happened. It was a very eventful Winter Olympics, I think, both good and bad. But ultimately, always enjoyable to have some sport on the TV. Well,
we've got a lot of other sport to cover, but I thought we'd start with that and our takeaways from those Olympic Games, because as you say, there was controversy, there was things that we're never going to forget about these games, both on and off the field of play, so to speak. So I'm going to start with actually the one thing that concerned me, and it concerned me after Tokyo, the effects of the pandemic on athletes. The ones that tested positive particularly and had to be isolated, the loneliness and the uncertainty that they faced when that happened, Nancy, at a crucial point when they're peaking in their athletic career, for an Olympic Games, whether it's their first, second or third, it doesn't matter, but you peak in terms of your fitness and form and your psychological build-up, and then you get these layers of unpredictability on top of it. I think that's going to be really devastating for a lot of the athletes. Some of them seem to pull through. I mean, look at Elana Meyers-Taylor, who went through it. She had both her husband and son there, and she did pull through it, and she came home, with medals. But that really concerns me, what happened, not just in Beijing, but also in Tokyo as well, the effects of the pandemic on these athletes.
Yeah, and it did seem, I think, particularly strict. They had that closed loop system where it was kind of, you couldn't really go in or out of the closed loop. And I think some of the experiences of some of the athletes they reported that it was, they weren't treated the best and it was a bit confusing, and they thought they were going to be taken, back to the Olympic Village, and they were taken to another isolation hotel. So it did seem like it was, like you said, you have that stress and that uncertainty, and then probably the devastation of testing positive, and then to kind of, be put in pretty tough conditions. I think I imagine it will have affected some athletes kind of on a long-term basis. And as well, the Olympics are only every 4 years. So maybe some of the athletes, this was kind of their only shot or their last shot at the Games. Hopefully that hasn't happened to too many people. But yeah, it was, I'm really hoping. Obviously, the next Olympic Games isn't until 2024 now. So it's two and a bit years away. So I'm hoping by the time that comes around, COVID isn't a feature whatsoever.
Yes, well, you would hope so by then that we wouldn't have any restrictions. It's going to be a lot easier on the athletes, hopefully, to get back to a new norm. We're really looking forward to that. That, of course, is in Cortina d'Ampezzo, which is going to be absolutely fantastic venue. I'm really, really excited about that. Are you ever thinking you'll go to a Winter Olympics? I know that you've done a Summer Olympics. Right.
I haven't done a Summer Olympics. Because of the whole postponement, and then I left inside the game. So, yes. But I think a Summer Olympics is a lot more achievable, especially the next one in Paris. I think potentially, I think I think a lot of journalists sometimes go with not that much knowledge of winter sports, and I wouldn't say I have a lot of knowledge, but I suppose I have a lot of knowledge of the wider Olympic movement, and I have reported on winter sports. So I think it would be quite. As well, I did like the Winter University Games. So I think it would be, and the Winter Youth Olympic Games, actually. So I've actually got pretty close to it. So I think definitely in the future would be something that I'd like to do. So fingers crossed.
Hopefully you'll graduate to it eventually. But just going back to Beijing, and I think, one of the things that dominated these games, unquestionably, was the controversy that faced the Russian skater Kamilia Valieva with her doping ban suspension that was overturned, so she was able to skate. And after the short program, she seemed like a clear favourite. There was no doubt. I'm sure you watched that too, and she looked unbeatable at that point. But alas, the pressure and the moment took its toll, because at the age of 15, she was under that tremendous pressure from because of the doping scandal, and then the expectations of her winning the gold medal in her first Olympic Games. But she'll not only be remembered for that, but she'll be remembered, sadly, in the final program for falling not once but 3 times she fell, which put her out of medal contention. And then the ensuing scenes, Nancy, I'm sure you saw that among the Russian skaters after that performance, from the gold medalist Anna Shcherbakova and the silver medalist Alexandra Trusova, that was, I thought, spoke volumes for the Russian program and the effect on these teenagers. And the comments that followed, and I'm sure you saw that from the IOC president Thomas Bach, when he criticized the Russian coach Etera Tuberets, who she was very insensitive, I thought, and very harsh in her reaction to Camille's performance, and it denied her and Russia, of course, a clean sweep of the medals. So I think that will be long remembered by athletes and fans. And I want to get your reaction to that, to those scenes as well. But I do want to say, let's not forget, through the Japanese skater Kaori Sakamoto, she skated beautifully, and her elegant performances both in the short and the final program earned her the bronze medal. And I was very pleased to see her on the podium. But tragedy and triumph was everywhere when it came to skating at the Olympics this year.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think the scenes were quite tragic for that figure skating final. I think just, obviously if Valieva had won a medal or gold, that would have been controversial in itself, because, there would have been the lack of medal ceremony, there would have been the likely hearing that's happening after, and potentially she would have been stripped of the medals. But I think what happened instead was you could see how obviously it affected her. Everything that had been going on affected her performance, and how obviously, she's a 15-year-old girl, how it got to her. And I think that is something that made it, just quite sad to watch. And the harsh reaction from the Russian entourage, and then you kind of see that what happened there, and it's like, is it surprise that she's in this mess when you've got such a young talented athlete as well that's being treated like that? It was quite hard to watch, and I think obviously there's a bit of a debate now about the age limit at the Olympics and stuff like that, and I'm not sure where I stand on it really, because I think you can have if you look to the Summer Olympics, where in skateboarding, like, all the finalists were teenagers more or less, and they all seemed very happy, having a great time. They won that sportsmanship award for helping one of the skateboarders when she fell over. And they're, like Sky Brown for Britain was like 13 years old. And in that sense, that seems like it's something that's done well, a way that they've dealt well with young athletes, and they're being looked after by their federations and their, National Olympic Committee. But you kind of saw the contrast of that in the figure skating in Beijing. It was completely opposite. And it shows, I think, how it can be done badly when you've got young athletes competing.
Yes, I thought it was insensitive. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that coach is known for being very, very harsh. I mean, that's her modus operandi. That's how she's got to where she's got with these athletes. All 3 of them are being coached by her. Those 3 medal contenders. So it was a blow to her. But I think you only have to look at the body language and not least of all what she said to her when she left the rink, when she came off the ice, rather. And it really upset them all, to the point that, that the gold medalist was left in the corner completely on her own. No support at all, because all attention had been, taken up by, Shcherbakova, who was really throwing a tantrum, said, I'm never going to skate again, and I'm not going to go and collect a medal. In fact, they did persuade her she did have to go and collect her medal. But, just devastating, unsportsmanlike scenes. Really, really bad for the sport, bad for Russia as well, bad for their skating program, but bad for the Olympic movement per se and these young athletes. But I did notice you found a story in tennis about a 14-year-old who was, again, very, very young, but she's on the WA tour, Brenda Ferritova.
Yeah, so she's a Czech player who she made her WTA tour main draw debut this week at a tournament in Mexico. And she went through the qualifiers to reach the main draw, and subsequently became the youngest player to compete in a tour match since Madison Keys in 2009. She played Sloane Stephens in the first round of the main draw and lost, but I think she's still kind of considered now as one to watch. She previously, before competing in this WTA tournament, she won 2 International Tennis Federation's events in Argentina, and became the youngest female competitor to win an ITF tournament in 6 years, and is rapidly rising up the world rankings. But yeah, at 14 years old, that is really, really young. And again, you just hope that she has kind of the correct entourage around her to help her develop into. Obviously, she's clearly a very good tennis player, and you just hope that she's got that around her and she can blossom, as opposed to kind of be stunted by being so good so young.
Yes, it's it's really hard to have that kind of pressure on you when you're young, and as we saw with Kamilia Valieva, she clearly was overwhelmed by it all. I don't know if you saw her performance and falling. I think once she'd fallen the first time, she'd really lost the plot. She really had mentally, I think, come undone. So very, very, very hard on her. It'll be interesting to see if any of these medalists of the those Russian girls, those 3, do come back. Certainly Shebakova, who threatened never to skate again. I have to wonder if she will ever come back, or whether she will get over this because she's part of the program. I guess we'll find out. It will remain to be seen. So I want to move on to skiing. Obviously, that was a fantastic, apart from the artificial snow and then us having proper snow, which really rapidly changed the conditions for the skiers at the Beijing Olympics. But another athlete who came undone was, of course, Mikaela Shiffrin, who was carrying the pressure to medal in most of all her 6 disciplines. Well, she had a miserable games, underperforming in both the speed and the tech races by either skiing out or finishing way down the rankings. I think that was really, really hard on her. She took it very well, though, Nancy. Did you see some of her interviews?
Yeah, I think she, like you said, took it really well. Very kind of gracious and reflective and honest. So, yeah, hopefully it kind of doesn't affect her as, in the years to come. She
will come back. And, of course, they are this weekend. They're in Crans-Montana in Switzerland. So 4 more World Cup races. So she'll be back at it. But I do want to, of course, like I did last week, give a shout out to the Swiss team, because they not only were doing very well last week, they finished up with 3 Olympic champions among the 7 medalists. They had a fantastic games. So they'll be, again, taking their game now to the final few races, as I said, in Crans-Montana this weekend. And hopefully, too, Italy's Sofia Goggia will wrap up her season without any further injury and be able to hold on to that downhill title. She's top of the rankings at the moment, and add that to her Olympic silver medal in the downhill in Beijing. Bit of an upset for her, but I thought an upset in some ways. She expected to medal, and you could see momentarily in her reaction when Corinne Suter came down and topped her that it was a big disappointment. She thought she'd got this far, overcoming that knee injury from 3 weeks ago. Then she thought she'd done enough. And it really looked like she'd done enough. But no, the Swiss were not going to let the Italians have their own way in this Games by any stretch. So it was an exciting skiing Olympics, Nancy, and I know Britain didn't have anyone that was skiing into contention by any means, but hopefully you enjoyed some of it.
Yeah, I did. It was, someone that doesn't really have access to that much skiing. It was nice to have it kind of happening regularly and being able to watch it. And I think as well, it was quite nice because I know some of the bigger names, I recognise them and know who's good. So having that little bit of knowledge made it more exciting as well. So I did really enjoy it.
We'll get you hooked into the World Cup season. Yeah, and don't forget you can watch Ski Sunday on BBC. That's something I always watch when I lived in England. That's a great roundup of the week's skiing. Ski Sunday usually is on a Sunday afternoon on, I don't know which BBC channel, but BBC produce it. So before we get away from the Winter Olympics, I do want to congratulate Kaillie Humphries again, the American, who won the monobob gold after her switch from being on the Canadian team. Of course, that story we've covered, and she subsequently had a fight to get US citizenship in time for these Olympics. And she did, and she got on top of the podium. And also, as I mentioned earlier, Elana Meyers-Taylor, for what she went through with testing positive for COVID, and she ended up with the bronze medal in the two women bob, as well as her silver medal from the monobob. And that, of course, when she arrived and she was tested positive, it meant that she wasn't able to be the US flag bearer in the open ceremony. But she got past that and she was chosen again for the closing ceremony. So good for her. And she also became the first, the black athlete in history now to take home more than the most medals, by two more Olympic medals that, like I said, to add to, she won silver medals in Pyeongchang and Seoul and bronze in Vancouver. So I think she's got the full set now. But she did say after the Games that this would probably conclude her Olympic career, but not that it would be her last race. So congratulations to all of them. I think, is there anyone else you'd like to highlight from the Games, Nancy? Any moments?
I think I've got to give a shout out to the women's British curling team.
Of course.
Just because we managed to scrape 2 medals right at the end of the Games. I think it'd been pretty disappointing beforehand. The men got silver and the women got gold. Unfortunately, it happened at about 2-3 a.m. So I was not awake to watch it live, but I watched a recap after, and it seemed a pretty comprehensive victory against Japan in the final to get gold. Particularly happy for Eve Muirhead, the skip, who she was competing at her 4th Olympics, and had just got that she'd just experienced quite a lot of near misses. So she got a bronze medal at Sochi, and had lost in the 3rd place playoff at Pyeongchang, and then finally managed to get gold. Really happy for them, and relieved as well that we got some medals in the bag.
Yeah, that was a nice way to finish the Games. And a bit of a surprise because, they were up against, curling giants, Canada, for one. I mean, they're pretty hard to beat, aren't they? And the Scandinavian countries.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to see the final, but I did watch the semi-final against Sweden, and that was a lot more tightly contested than the final against Japan. I think they were almost a bit lucky because Japan knocked out the defending champions, Switzerland, in the semi-final. So I think maybe Britain got slightly easier opposition in the final because of that upset. They did do really well. And I think that all of the team are Scottish, which explains why their curling proficiency is quite high. I think if you had anyone in there that wasn't Scottish, we wouldn't do as well. But it all counts. So really well done to them.
Yeah, good for them, making history for British curling. Before we go, and this is a story that broke at the beginning of the Games, if you remember, Nancy, in ski jumping. And 5 women ski jumpers were disqualified at these Games for the jumpsuits that they're wearing, and they're very specific, aren't they? I mean, like I say, 5 violations at these Games, but they're very strict rules about the suit. They examine the, they are checked before they can compete when they, with their suits, and make sure there's no advantage in the sort of span of the suits, right, in flight.
Yeah, what I found interesting about this as well is that I think a lot of the athletes had worn the same suits earlier on in the competition. So I think it was the mixed team event where they got caught up on it, but they'd all worn the same suits in the women's normal hill beforehand. So yeah, I think it was one of the Japanese coaches said that the extreme dry weather affected the suit, which does seem a little bit unfair, because like you said, they're very specific about it, and if like the weather is changing the suit, then I'm not sure how much the athletes can do about that. And I think it's very unfortunate as well, because the mixed team event, which is when all these disqualifications happened, that was it was making its debut at the Olympics, and it was meant to be this big celebration of like gender equality and stuff, and 5 of the women got disqualified, so it was a bit kind of, I think, ruined that occasion slightly. Yeah,
I think it did. Any other final thoughts on these Games?
I mean, I think, like I said at the start, really just quite eventful. I think a lot of what it will be remembered for is probably negative, is probably COVID, and Kamilia Valieva really kind of dwarfed, I think, the rest of the Games. But I think overall, enjoyable to watch, and there were some really nice stories, especially involving female athletes, that came out of it. So, yeah, I think a bit of a strange one overall.
All right, we're going to move on to the rest of the news, and really the top story, if we didn't have the Olympic Games, would be that the US WNT, the women's national soccer team here, they finally settled their lawsuit for equal pay for $24 million. That broke this morning. We're recording this on February 22nd, and it broke very early this morning that lawsuit had finally been settled after years of haggling. We thought we would never get past this. It just seemed that there would be that stalemate forever, didn't it, Nancy, when this first was launched a few years ago. I can't remember exactly. It's a few years that it's been going on.
Yeah, I think I tweeted something like that when I heard the news, because that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like it had been going on for ages. I think it was 2016 when it was first kind of complained about, and then the official legal stuff all happened in 2019. I mean, obviously it's really great news. I think so. Yeah, they're getting equal pay as the men's for all competitions, and then also getting kind of compensation for the fact that they haven't been paid the same for however many years. So I think it's $22 million to be split among the players, and then another $2 million fund for the players for post-career goals even. And
they can each take what, $50,000.
That's for the for the fund for the post-career fund.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's worth bearing in mind that total, so $24 million in total, is only a third of what they initially had kind of asked for in compensation when they first, went through the legal process. But they were on the back foot because the case had been thrown out of court. The equal pay claim had been thrown out of court, and it was meant to be appealed in March. So in the situation that they were in, US Soccer did not have to do this. They did not have to do the settlement. They didn't have to pledge equal pay, and they didn't have to give this compensation back. But I think clearly, there's a new president in charge, Cindy Cohn, And she clearly wants to have a good relationship with the women's team and the women's players. She's a former player herself. And I think that's what the difference is here, is that even though US Soccer don't have to do it, they want to make amends, I think, and want to have a good relationship with basically, you know, the most successful women's team in the world. Like, why would you not want to have them on side? So I think it's great that it hasn't had to, you know, go to an appeal, and, you know, all the legal stuff hasn't had to keep going on and on and on, that they finally just accepted it and given the players what they've asked for. So yeah, a really, really, really good day for women's sport, basically.
Yeah, for women's sport, especially for football. But I did watch the interview on the NBC Today program here this morning with Megan Rapinoe and Cindy and Alex Morgan. All three of them were on that show. And they're now talking about, okay, that's that box checked, but they're going to take this to FIFA now. Yeah. And I think that will be a big fight. But there's no stopping the Megan Rapinoes and Alex Morgans of this world. I mean, the women that initiated this in the first place, and they've got all the rest of the players behind them, of course, but they are pretty powerful when it comes to women's sports, and especially in football now and in international football. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out now in the light of this settlement. Yeah,
and I really like that Megan Rapinoe said that. I think it shows that this wasn't just about, you know, it wasn't necessarily self-interest or about just getting equal pay for themselves. They do genuinely care about making like football and sport a more equal place. And I agree, like there's a lot of stuff that's going on, you know, above just national level, you know, like international level and FIFA, in terms of prize money for stuff like the World Cups, in terms of federations not giving their women's teams the adequate resources and investment and that. And I think if you've got someone powerful like Megan Rapinoe and someone like Alex Morgan campaigning for that, then, you know, it should make a big difference. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out.
Yeah, let's not forget that Norway, Australia and the Netherlands are among the countries whose football federations have already combined to close the pay gap between men and women.
England and Ireland as well.
England and Ireland as well, yes, let's not forget them too. Yeah. So, you know, there's a building international momentum here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the more and more countries that do it, the more pressure there is for others to do it. I think the US is significant just because I think other countries could say, well, look, like the most successful team in the world don't get equal pay. Why should we do it? But now that's not an excuse. So hopefully we'll see more countries do the same.
Yeah. Okay, I want to mention the She Believes Cup, which we talked about last week. It was getting underway. There's 3 games, four countries playing. The US played Czechoslovakia last week and had to settle for a goalless draw, but this past weekend on Sunday afternoon, a very convenient time, Eastern Standard Time, 3 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, they played New Zealand. And we know from the Olympics in Tokyo last year, Nancy, how disadvantaged New Zealand were, having not been able to play for a year because of COVID. Now coming together as a team, it wasn't a surprise that we would beat them. We had 2 goals of our own by Ashley Hatch and Mallory Pugh. But again, this game is going to go down a bit like the Olympics and Valieva in the Olympics. Well, we're going to remember this game forever, but by the 3 own goals by the same player, Michaela Moore, that came not only the 5th minute, but a minute later, the 6th minute, and then in the 36th minute. To have 1 own goal, you just want to bury your head. But what happened to that poor girl? 3 times, and then she was pulled off before half-time, which was particularly hard, I thought. I thought I would have, you know, if I'd have been coach, I'd have waited till half-time. So it meant that the US won 5-0, but we will remember that game more for that poor woman, Michaela Moore, and her own goals. Would you have pulled her off then, or would you have waited to half-time? What would you have done as a coach?
I think I would have waited. Also, just to talk to her to see where her head's at, because maybe she would want to continue and try and make amends. I mean, by that point, it's done. It's not necessarily that she was playing badly. So I think I would have waited till half time and talked to her and seen where her head was at and whether she wanted to come off. And yeah, just kind of save the embarrassment. I think it's a bit humiliating, isn't it? Doing it before half time.
Yeah, I really, really felt for her. A very, very emotional time for her. So we'll see if they're going to be playing Czechoslovakia this week in the She Believes Cup. We are going to be playing Iceland tomorrow when the show goes out on Wednesday the 23rd in Texas. So that will conclude our 3 games in the She Believes Cup. And yeah, looking forward to that, of course, and because this series, Nancy, has been really a test for the young players. We have so many young players that are coming forward and having, their chance at proving themselves in this competition. It's been really, really fun to watch some of them. I'm super excited about the depth and quality of this young squad. So we've got one more game to go, and of course this summer is the Olympic qualifiers as well. So we'll see the veterans come back. Some of them have not, they haven't retired from the national squad. But this series has been a chance to see these younger players come and prove themselves, and they're certainly doing that. It's been great fun to watch. And now I know you weren't in the She Believes Cup this year, but you had your own competition. How's that been going so far in there? What was it, Martin Collins Cup? No, I'm thinking of somebody else.
Arnold Clark Cup.
Arnold Clark.
Yeah, just sounds weird. It's been very interesting. It's been really, really, really close. So yeah, Germany, Spain, England, Canada, 4 very, very good teams. The first match day, it was Germany 1, Spain 1, and then England and Canada also drew 1-1. The second match day, it was England 0, Spain 0, and then Canada beat Germany 1-0. So it's been quite a few goals and very close. There's a final match day tomorrow with Spain taking on Canada and England versus Germany. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's been interesting from my perspective anyway to see England against really high quality opposition, because we've been playing relatively easy teams in the World Cup qualifiers, and it's you're playing Canada, the Olympic champions, and Spain, who are considered one of the best teams in the world. And we had Sarina Wiegman, the England manager, was rotated for the Spain game quite significantly and had essentially kind of like the B team, like the players that she wasn't sure about playing. And so I think to draw 1-0 even against Spain is a pretty good result. I'm not sure really who's going to win the tournament. I think if Canada beats Spain, then they've got it, because they have won 2. But judging by how close this tournament is so far, I wouldn't be surprised if there are a couple more draws in the bag. We'll have to see.
I would say that was a much stronger competition than we've got here with these teams in the She Believes Cup. So a real test for some of those teams, and some great football, I would imagine. Did you find the same over there though in this tournament? About these teams trying out the younger players, or was that very much an American thing? I
think, for England especially, because we've got the Euros in the summer, I don't think there were some younger players, but there was not like, let's just test them out and see how it does, because I think Sarina Wiegman, and I imagine maybe Canada is different, but especially Spain and Germany, like the Euros are only like 4 months away now. So, it's kind of a bit too soon to a major international tournament to be testing out younger players. Personally, I'd love to see that some of the younger players in WSL that are, really making the name for themselves come into England. But I think we're going to have to wait until after the summer, after the Euros are over.
Yeah. Well, you'll let us know how that goes next week, of course, and we'll bring you the concluding scenarios from those 2 tournaments on next week's programme. We're going to move on to Commonwealth Games now. So we've got a new host announced for the 2026 Commonwealth Games.
Yes, so Victoria in Australia. So the Commonwealth Games are going back to Australia again after they were hosted in the Gold Coast in 2018. I think this is a big relief for the Commonwealth Games Federation, because they were struggling to find anyone to host the event, and it's now only 4 years away. So ideally they would have wanted to have given this event to someone by now. Victoria came in to save the day. There was actually quite a flurry of interest from across Australia, of people bidding. Not bidding, but expressing interest. So New South Wales, Adelaide and Tasmania as well declared that they wanted to host the event. And eventually it went to Victoria. So yeah, still got the 2022 Commonwealth Games to go this summer in Birmingham, but then all focus will now switch to Victoria.
Yeah, and on the Olympic cycle, of course, the Summer Olympics are going to Brisbane.
Yes.
After LA.
Very Australian focused. Got the Women's World Cup there in 2023 as well. So might as well just move to Australia, I think.
I think we talked about this before, that we should be going down there. There's so much happening. We've got cricket and rugby and New Zealand now.
Everything.
The World Cup. So, a lot of great sport down under. We've got another first, though, first female coach. We often bring you news of coaches breaking that glass ceiling, and we've got one in the men's hoops. Tell us about that. That's from Morocco, basketball in Morocco.
Yeah, so Liz Mills, who is an Australian basketball coach, she's become the first female head coach of a men's team in Morocco. She's been hired by AS Sales, who compete in Morocco's top division. And she's also going to be the first female head coach in the Basketball Africa League when the joint NBA and FIBA competition starts next month. So she's already quite a trailblazer within basketball. She was the first female head coach at a men's Afro basket tournament when she led Kenya to the title last summer. So, obviously very successful and trailblazing. And, like you said, we do a lot of stories of the kind of first women to do stuff, and we like to see that. And hopefully more will follow her.
Most definitely. Yeah, we've had a few of those. A good luck to her. There's a story, a doping story out of Nigeria for the Nigerian sprinter Blessing Okabare. She's got a 10-year doping ban, Nancy. That's pretty much paid to her career, isn't it?
Yeah, I think in all my time, I don't think I've seen a doping ban quite as bad as that. Potentially maybe once or twice, but it's a severe doping ban. It's for multiple breaches of anti-doping rules. So she was banned for 5 years for the use of multiple prohibited substances, and then 5 as well for not cooperating with the investigation. So she did kind of make the situation worse for herself by not cooperating. She was actually suspended during the Tokyo Olympics after failing a drugs test while at the Games. And she had been a medal contender for the 100 meters. But yeah, she won her heat, but then was ruled out of the semi-finals. But yeah, she's 33 years old, has been around for quite a while, has competed in the long jump, so won a silver medal in the long jump at the Beijing 2008 Olympics, and also has world championship medals in the 200 meter and long jump competitions as well. So quite an established athlete. But like you said, I think 10 years, that's basically her career over now. So I don't think we'll be seeing her again, on the track.
Well, we're going to end on a much happier note this week, Nancy. It's a story that we both love that's come out of endurance racing. The endurance, the ultra runners, women really do seem to be making headlines when it comes to competing against the men. And this one is about the American endurance runner Camille Herron, who is going to be a guest on our Amazon show soon. So stay tuned for that. But I think that's a story that you particularly enjoyed too, didn't you?
I did, yeah. There were so many aspects to it that I liked. So Herron won the USA Track and Field 100-mile championships, which took place in Nevada. So she broke her own women's world record to win, which was 12 hours, 41 minutes and 11 seconds. So almost a minute and a half faster than her previous record, which was set in November 2017. She was also nearly 30 minutes faster than second place, who was a male athlete, Arlen Click. He finished in 13 hours, 10 minutes and 25 seconds. And then Heron, having turned 40, she also competed for the first time in the Masters category for athletes aged 40 to 44 and broke the 50-mile world record in that age group with a time of 6 hours, 8 minutes and 24 seconds. So yeah, I think just amazing, really. And I sent me and my friends, some of us are doing like a trail half marathon in May. And I sent this to them as like inspiration. And one of them was like, I just love the fact that she did it like while drinking beer and eating tacos, because I think she's quite known for doing that during her ultra marathons. There's a picture, she shared a picture of herself during this race with like her drinking a beer. So yeah, I think just that is also brilliant as well. And I mean, we were talking about this before we started recording, but it's always quite nice. Yeah, it's quite satisfying to see a female athlete beat a male athlete in something, and it does often happen in these endurance events. You know, you do hear about it quite a lot, but obviously you just need to be an incredible athlete to be running for like 12 hours. That is just absolutely incredible and mind-blowing, and I can't really comprehend it. So yeah, congratulations to her, and I'm looking forward to listening to that podcast episode.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to her. Congratulations to her. Yeah, we love those results. Now, that must have, as you say, gave you inspiration and for the runs you've got scheduled and being the marathon runner. So what's the first race for you now? Because you're running regularly now, and you said you just came back from a run today.
Yeah, I have actually. I was planning just a casual half marathon in March, just like around one of the local parks in London. But I've pushed that back to April just because when I had COVID, it just kind of pushed me off schedule a little bit. And then I didn't really want to push myself either, because obviously I don't have any respiratory issues after having COVID, but might as well just you know, seeing as it's quite a casual event, can just take it easy a bit. So yeah, hoping to do a sub 2 hour half marathon in April, and then in May have this trail half marathon in the Lake District. And then I have signed up for the London Marathon, and I actually got an email today saying that they've pushed, so the ballot results was meant to come out this week. They've pushed it back to mid-March. So I'll have to wait a couple more weeks to find out whether I'll be doing that or not. So yeah, that's kind of my schedule for this year.
Yeah, very exciting. Well, I've started biking again. I actually got out and did just over 11 miles yesterday. Fortunately, the weather was kind. It's not going to be kind every day in February, but I'll take it when we can, because I need to get the mileage up. I'm doing a 159 miler in April, Nancy. So wow. I need to turn those pedals and get myself ready for that. I'm not going to do it in a day, though, so don't expect that I'll do 159 miles in a day, will you?
Oh, no, of course not. I mean, I have faith if you were trying, but yeah, that does sound like a lot.
I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be on the Potomac River Trail here in Northern Virginia. It starts in Maryland. Well, we're going to start in Maryland and come south. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So we've both got goals, Nancy, for this year.
Yeah, it's always good to have goals. Keeps you focused. So, yeah.
Most definitely.
Keep each other accountable as well. That's
right. Yeah, that's for sure. For sure. Well, that about wraps our show up for this week. The end of the Olympic Games for another 4 years. We'll have to wait for Paris for some more games. That will happen soon enough. Looking forward to that. And potentially you may be making your debut at the Summer Olympics, Nancy.
Hopefully, yeah. Fingers crossed. It's only across the ocean.
Yeah.
So the channel even. So it's, yeah, very possible.
Yeah. All right. Well, a lot more of that to come, of course. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're at Wisp Sports, and the show notes with the links to the stories, as always, at wispsports.com. Nancy, tell them how to find you.
Yep. So I'm at Nancy_Gillen on Twitter, and my Instagram is NancyGillen_sport. And everything I write is on Give Me Sport Women, which on Twitter is Give Me Sport W. So you can find me there.
Okay, super. Well, as always, we appreciate you following us and listening to the show every week. Don't forget, if you have a chance whilst you're on your podcast app to leave us a review, that always helps others find us too. So again, thank you for listening. We'll be back here this time next week. Goodbye for now.